I've drawn a bunch of forests, a bunch of mountains, rivers, lakes, but sometimes our fantasy maps need a little bit of variety. So in this video, I'm figuring out how to draw jungles, volcanoes, and wetlands. Wetlands. Let's go draw. When illustrating maps, I like to keep things super simple. It's all about using basic, easy to draw icons. And the cool thing about fantasy maps is they can look super awesome and detailed, but they're super easy to draw. By filling up an entire page with these simple icons, it makes the map look really complex and detailed and super cool. So let's look at jungles as an example. To draw a jungle, I think it should start with palm trees. It's just 3 or 4 leaves on top of a trunk. So the most simple way to think about palm leaves is with a straight line on the bottom and then a curved line on the top. You can put 2 leaves in the front and then kind of layer the other 2 leaves behind. So this makes it look like all 4 leaves are kind of like falling out of the center of the trunk, if that makes sense. Now, palm trees have trunks that can lean and blow in the wind, so giving the trunk a little bit of a curve I think looks pretty good. There's also the super tall canopy-like trees. I'm just drawing the leaves to look like little clouds and then adding a few branches to the trunks. Maybe some vines hanging down too. I don't know, they look kind of jungly, right? Now, to make a jungle with these trees, you can just draw the icon over and over again, or you can clump them up together. So I like to draw the bottom line of the jungle with the individual trees, and then fill up the rest of the jungle by drawing just the tops of the trees, as if you're looking at it from above and the jungle is receding backwards. If you want to make a jungle with the canopy type trees, it works exactly the same, but maybe stick a few palm leaves out of the top as well to give it some variety. Now, let's talk volcanoes. If you're drawing a icon style map, volcanoes are pretty simple. You know, if mountains are just triangles, then a volcano is a triangle with the top chopped off. You can add some simple details like lava flowing over, or the top can be jagged, or maybe there's some smoke coming out if it's about to erupt. And this idea works the same for drawing more complicated looking volcanoes. Just draw a mountain how you normally would, but with the top chopped off. Add some hatching to give the volcano some dimension, add the lava and the smoke, and you're good to go. So drawing lava or anything that glows is tricky in black and white. I'm not sure if I've totally figured out, but I think making these sort of like dark ovals, like the lava has started to cool on top, looks okay. There's tons of different ways to draw mountains, and that means there's tons of different ways to draw volcanoes. Testing things out like this beforehand is a great way to figure out how you like to draw something before jumping into actually illustrating the map. Big giant volcanoes can be a really cool centerpiece to a fantasy map, so definitely take the time to figure out how you want to draw them beforehand. Okay, wetlands. So I guess jungles can have swamps in them, but where I grew up in Florida, we had these intercoastal waterways, so I kind of think of, you know, where the trees stop and rivers and stuff flow into the ocean. It's this kind of unique environment. Sort of swampy, sort of jungly with water. You know, think of it as like the really thick grass with the cattails sticking up out of the water. So on maps I saw as a kid, wetlands were always indicated by this symbol, the little 3 sticks popping out from the line. So in an icon style, you can just throw these simple little 3-pronged grass symbols around wherever you want to indicate the wetlands on your map. Now, I don't think I need to get too much more complicated. Just some tufts of grass and maybe some cattails sticking out would work. But as I'm drawing this, I'm realizing that doesn't really show the wet part of the wetlands. So I'm going to add some rings around the grass to sort of show that it's sticking up out of the water. Now, when it comes to incorporating the wetlands into an area's shoreline, I think the important thing to remember is having the waves that, bump up against the land, they naturally need to wrap around these grass clumps. So it might be good to think about these wetlands as an additional shoreline. Does that make sense? Maybe I should show off a better, more practical example of what I mean. So now that I've figured out how I want to draw these three elements, it's time to put them all together into an actual map. So my new pal Kyle just sent me his 2021 Zine Quest zine called Old Roads. It's filled with these insanely awesome maps, and it's got me totally inspired. So where I am a super planned out, very rigid step 1, step 2, step 3, etc. in how I draw, Kyle is loose and free-flowing and improvisational. Now, I'm not saying that one way is better than the other, but I thought for this map that I'm drawing, I'd try to loosen up like Kyle and see how it goes. So usually I would draw this map completely in pencil first, figure everything out, but this time I'm being really loose, trying to be like Kyle and keep it rough. So my idea is this island has been split in two, and on one side there's this big old jungle, and then on the other side there's this nasty volcano. The lava is flowing down into the chasm between the two islands, and it's making this lush wetlands in between. Now, because this is a fantasy map, I'm not trying to be consistent or realistic with how things would actually occur in nature, so I'm just having fun making this weird island. And really, this is a pretty simple map, just drawing palm trees and then adding a bunch of leaves receding behind to make it look jungly. I went with this sort of cracked volcano whose lava is spilling out, making this lake before it waterfalls off of the edge of the island. I've added some cliffs in there by simply putting vertical lines down from where the island would typically meet the water. And to make the map a little bit more interesting, I'm throwing in a mysterious spire in the middle of the jungle, a little village, and a strange mound that maybe has some sort of tomb below it. And lastly, I'm adding in the lines to indicate waves. Hopefully you can see how they sort of break around the wetlands to give it a sort of shallow feel. Like all this plant life is just forcing its way up above the water. So you can see there's not really any complicated drawing going on here. Once I figured out how to draw each of the elements individually, it's just a matter of putting them all together, repeating them over and over again, and pretty soon there's a pretty interesting looking little map. So if you can draw some little palm trees, a big triangle with the top cut off, and some squiggly little grass shapes, you can absolutely make a map that looks like this. Now there's one last step here. See, Kyle has a fantastic YouTube channel called Map Crow. I'll have a link in the description. If you're a fan of my videos, just go subscribe to Kyle. I promise you'll like everything he does. He talks a lot about making maps, and lately he's been redesigning fantasy monsters, and it's the best. It's so cool. He uses colored pencils for a lot of his artwork, so I'm gonna take more inspiration from Kyle and give that a shot to spice up this island map even more. So yeah, let me know what you think of this little map down in the comments, or if you have any questions about the process at all. And if you end up drawing your own jungle, volcano, wetlands map, please share it with me on social media. If you'd like to support this channel, or maybe you'd like to get a new tabletop role-playing game adventure every month, check out my Patreon. There's a link in the description. This month I'm writing an adventure all about a bunch of crazy kobolds that worship this giant skeletal dragon. It should be a fun one. All right, that's it for this island map filled with jungles and a volcano and wetlands. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya!